Thanks for watching The 9.
Rishi Sharma has spent the last several years of his life, his young life, working to share the stories of World War II veterans, and he joins us now live with more about his mission.
And Rishi, you're 25. You've been doing this since you were 16?
Yeah, I appreciate this opportunity, guys. Basically, when I was in high school, I started interviewing World War II veterans, and I just fell in love with it. I mean, you're getting to meet people who are willing to sacrifice their lives for people like me to exist, and they have these harrowing tales of combat, of courage, of sacrifice. They fought across the world. I mean, it's really like movies in real life. And as a young child, really a schoolboy, I started to meet these veterans, and when I graduated, I realized that our history is not being preserved, you know, and I have the ability with the video camera to completely document this generation. So I've set out on a mission to interview every single World War II veteran, combat veteran of the Allied countries.
And that's why you're here, to interview World War II combat veterans living in Michigan. You have one after our show today.
Absolutely. I'm going to Ithaca to interview C.O. Bauer. He's a 100-year-old veteran who was seriously wounded at the Battle of Metz. I just came from Midland, Michigan last night, where we interviewed Ray Terwilliger. He was shot in the lung, 3 times in the leg. There are a lot of heroes in Michigan, and I want their stories to be preserved. The veterans are all given copies of these interviews. We share it with schools and universities, and we also have a popular YouTube channel called Remember World War II, where a couple million people watch these oral histories. And the point of it is so that future generations will innately understand, even when these heroes are not amongst us, that real men and women were willing to die, and so many of them did, so that we could enjoy the comfortable existences that we have today. I mean, the reality is we get to wake up in a world in which our homes are not bombed out every morning. Little children can dream about their lives 80 years from now instead of worrying about whether or not they'll be alive this time tomorrow. We could go up to anyone, say whatever we want without any fear of repercussion. You know, these freedoms and opportunities didn't just happen. They were paid for with bloodshed and sacrifice of real men and women. 429,000 Americans gave their entire existences in World War II. I mean, that's the beginning, middle, and end of your life at 20 years old, you know?
And it is one of the things that we learned from The Greatest Generation, a book that came out, is that we learned about those fighting in World War II did not want to come home and share their stories, whether it was they were either living with a lot of the after effects, trauma, or privacy, not wanting to boast, wanting to just go back to some sort of normalcy. So that's why a lot of this is perhaps not known until we hear from these real living historical figures.
That is such a wonderful point, and you're absolutely right. PTSD was not diagnosed back then. After the war, these gentlemen were told to man up and move on. The vast majority of veterans who I meet and interview, it's the first time that they're actually able to talk about their experiences, or that someone has shown an interest. So many of them don't share it with their families, not because they don't care about them, but really because they do it out of concern. They don't want their families to even harbor those thoughts. And so what's interesting is I have 3 things in my favor, and good looks is not one of them. But I'm the same age a lot of the veterans were, and they were in action. I've done copious amounts of research before each interview, so I can talk the talk, right, talk shop. But the most important thing, guys, is that I'm not related to any of these men. And they look at me, it's almost like a censor-free environment, a non-judgment zone where they can share these experiences of what it was like to be in a position where it was truly kill or be killed without fearing that my perception or their family's perception of them would change.
You've talked to over 2,200 World War II combat veterans. Is there a common theme? Is there a common message that they share with you throughout your conversations with them?
That's a great question. Yes, the main thing that I've taken away from these interviews is the veterans have 2 main points of advice, and it doesn't matter. I've been to all 50 states and across, you know, like I said, the U.S., Canada, Australia, New Zealand. It's all the same. They're all, it's like every day of their lives has been about putting those around them ahead of them. So they grew up in the Great Depression, quit school voluntarily to put food on the table for their families. Pearl Harbor gets attacked. Many of them lied about their age to get into the service, not to run away from war, but to be in a position to go to war. After 4 or 5 years of the largest conflict in the history of the world, right, the heaviest combat, 80 million dead, they come home, No PTSD was diagnosed. Like I said, they're told to man up and move on, and yet they didn't want parades or medals. All they wanted was their old jobs back and to raise a family. This is the same generation that has built up suburbia and the idea of community service. Rotary, 4-H, Lions, Kiwanis, all those civic organizations were either created by World War II veterans or their ranks were filled. They've become like an army of volunteers. And then, you know, they put man on the moon, but they have this simple message is, don't forget those who died. And I don't know if you'd call it survivor's guilt, but so many of the veterans, really all of them, will bring up, even though the interview's about them, they'll bring up the men who were killed overseas, and that they're the real heroes. And so it's just so important to document this.
What a wonderful project. And I know recently I was at a restaurant and I saw, sometimes you will see a World War II veteran. He was wearing a hat and it was clear. And I was so amazed to be in his presence because, yeah, there are a few left that have these important stories to tell. So good for you for capturing them and making sure they live forever.
We've had the phone number on throughout. We invite anybody, if you know a World War II combat veteran who would like to tell their story, Rishi wants to hear from you. 202-315-8743 is the phone number, and you can watch these videos. Visit rememberww2.org.
Thank you guys for this opportunity. It's just so important that we can capture these stories while they're amongst us.
Absolutely.
Absolutely.
Thank you. We'll be right back.